And welcome back on this glorious and amazing day, part 10, and I think we will conquer now the last and final question. What happens, heaven forbid, your child does get hurt and does get touched? There's an 80% chance, or maybe 95, that he will not or she will not come and tell you, because like we discussed in other clips, that's the reason why they got molested in the first place, because they're lacking a lot. Most kids do not trust their parents on very deep issues, especially not molestation, because they know already what's going to happen. And by the way, I did my own survey of children, and I asked them all the same question, from 1 to 100. How much of your inner deep feelings do you tell your parents? How much percent, and how much do you keep in? Which means, of course, you discuss to your parents about school, about your schedule, but from your inner heart, how much percent? The average, so painful. The average is 90% they conceal from their own parents. This is not my philosophy. This is not what I made up. And this is not what I read. This is from interviewing hundreds of older children and young teens. So the first thing is, let's talk about what not to do. The first thing what not to do is the first thing you're going to want to do. And me as a parent, I would want to do it as well. I would want to jump to the child or yell, or you feel all that frustration in you and you want to say, so why didn't you yell? Why didn't you tell them to stop? And if you listen to any of the other, to the first few clips, you'll understand why. But we won't discuss it, we won't explain it now. The reality is that's the worst thing you can tell a child. I can't believe this is true, but one of my clients told me that, I feel like vomiting now. Even her therapist asked that question. Cute. We will explain in another clip why that's wrong and what it does to the brain, and actually what molestation does to the brain, because any book you'll pick up or any lecture you're going to listen to, no one discusses something that happens to the brain. They all discuss the trauma, they discuss the loss of trust, but there's way more than that. So we know what not to do. Do not ever ask your child or young teen, why didn't you tell them to stop? What you should do is just listen. And for a large percent of you, it's going to be hard, because or you forgot that you got molested, or you never dealt with it, or you never healed completely. So if you yourself got molested and you're a parent, most probably you're going to freak out and you're going to react, and that's the wrong thing. The kid needs two responses. One is strength and one is compassion. But freaking out is not strength. The child needs to know that the mother or father will not freak out. And this is coming from an emotional person, so it's fine not to freak out at this point, because you're making it way worse. And the kid gets frightened. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why kids don't want to talk to their parents, because kids know instinctively that the parent will not react properly. Well, now, hopefully they will. And just look at the child's eyes. If the child wants to be hugged, and you could tell, just hold the child. Don't say a thing. Let the child talk. Let the child talk. And you could tell the child, or you could rather ask the child first, as many questions as possible. How did it feel? Was it scary? And the child will not be able to explain why it was so scary in many cases, because I will do another clip. It's extremely confusing, and most people cannot understand it. I go through this with 20-year-olds, 30, 40, 50-year-olds, and that's why they shut off part of their brain, because they can't deal. There's two parts of the brain that fight with each other, and it's very confusing. Let the child give as much as information, and then ask the child how he would like to go about it. Tell him you'll discuss it with your husband or discuss it with your wife. If the child says, no, 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 basically the child is saying, please do not tell the other parent, because they'll blame me. So you got to respect that, and you got to go to a professional to sit down with the other parent and the professional to work this through. Because if the child says no, there's a 99% chance the child knows what they're talking about. So if you think you're going to be kind and you're not going to listen to the child and then run to your spouse and say, well, our child says not to tell you, but obviously as a parent, I must tell you right away, blah, 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 and the parent will lose it and say, I don't believe it, tell me all about it, I'm going to call the police right now, I'm going to run to the guy's house. You are freaking out this child. I'm just reminded of a horrific story. There's someone, I was actually their counselor in an overnight camp in the 80s in Montreal. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah, this story slipped my mind. To make the long story short, the kid came out and did tell the parents, and sadly sometimes even the justice system doesn't deal with it so sensitive, and the child does freak out and the child's feelings are not taken into account. The justice system is so into the justice that they forget there's a human being, that we have to have justice, and the most important person to protect now is the child that got hurt. But this is a real freaking story. I'm not making this up, and you could do your own research. I'm obviously not going to say names. I never spoke to the family about it because I just remind myself now as I'm talking to you. And it was on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, which is Yom Kippur, and the mother went home after the service for the break. She found her young teen hanging, killed himself. What was the story behind that? The story behind that was that this child was supposed to go to court the next day to testify against his holy spiritual rabbi teacher. Justice was trying to be done, but no one dealt with this child's feelings, the fear, the anguish that he's going to have to go to court to testify what happened to him between him and his teacher. I guess he couldn't take it, and he hung himself. So this happened in the early 90s, I think. When I was his counselor, he was 11, yeah, in the early 90s. It is extremely important to take this not slow, but to be to right away connect to a professional. Don't do things quickly on your own, unless you know this predator's out there and is molesting every minute someone else. But if it takes within one day, that's fine. The one person that needs to be protected is your child. And for your child to take the chance, because only 5 to 20% of the children will take that chance to speak to their own parents, and you're going to hurt them, that is devastating, devastating, devastating. That will be another layer, another 5 or 10 years of therapy. So when your child talks to you, you can't say, hold on, let me go call a therapist so you die, bleed to death. Let me go call a therapist. No, the first sort of emergency level you could handle is don't freak out. Show the child that you're compassionate. Ask them questions. Tell them you're going to be there for them. Ask them how it felt. And just let them talk as much as possible. Do not start giving advice, and do not tell them you're taking care of this, because they have a lot to say. And hopefully, once you will see the other clips of what actually happens to their brain, you will be able to have even better conversations with them about the event. And then hopefully you and your spouse, or if you're a single parent and you can't talk to your spouse, it will be your brother or sister or your parent. And again, you need to educate them, no one to freak out. Because here you see from the story that I just mentioned, it's only one story. And there's thousands of these stories. Thank you. This was tough, but I did it. Have a wonderful and delightful day. And I hope that the world will become a place of less pain and more joy. A place of more freedom, yet respected boundaries.